Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you by Kativ Technologies. I'm Nigel Mbayak here at Kativ, Customer Success Manager, as well as just the General Application Engineer here at Kativ. I'm your host all days, and today, I guess, today we've got something really special going on. I mean, not even just today, for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be going over some of the advancements brought to you by the people at Autodesk, some of which have joined us here today. First and foremost, we have Garen, who's one of the product managers here at Autodesk, and he's probably showing up on your screens right now. How's it going, Garen?
Good, thank you.
Awesome. And we have, plenty more people. Actually, it's a full house on our end in the back today. Obviously, we have Jessica, who's downstairs helping us perform this recording and, giving you guys this AVA experience. We also have a couple more people from Autodesk. So we have Chris Mitchell. Chris, you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hi, guys. Good to see so many people.
Yeah, we've got Chris. We've got Dan as well. How's it going, Dan?
Hey, everybody. Dan Szymanski here. Doing great. Thanks.
And then we've got Kyle. And Kyle's the only one without a camera today. But Kyle, would you like to speak from the depths there?
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
So these are all people at Autodesk. These are all people who help create the products you guys use all day, every day. So definitely, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them through this session. As well as the next couple of sessions, right? Today, we're going to be going over Inventor. Next week, we're going to be going over Vault with our friend Irvin Hayes. And then the week after that, we'll be going over AutoCAD 2020 as well. So I'm really excited. These are my favorite webcasts of the year. We've been doing them for about 3 years now. So with that, if you have any questions, go ahead and type those into the panels for questions or chat at any time. I'll make sure to go ahead and answer all of those. I mean, with the help of people here at Autodesk. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Garen. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're excited. This is a fun time of year for us. We, in many cases, we've been working on projects that have lasted a year or up to 2 years, and we love getting them out in front of you guys, getting feedback, and just hear what you guys think. So we're excited for Inventor 2020. We wanted to share with you guys what's new in 2020. I'll also hit just briefly on the product design and manufacturing collection, some things that we're doing there. So we'll get rolling from there. One of the things when we kick off our next updates, when we start looking at what we're doing next, we oftentimes look at the product in a couple of different areas. We look at what we call professional grade, and that's a lot of the core functionality that you guys use day in and day out. It's part modeling, assemblies, drawings, iLogic, a lot of the core things that you guys do, and look for ways that we can enhance, speed that up, make that a better experience. We also look at the connected workflows. So that could be through tools like AnyCAD that allow you to associatively bring in non-native Inventor data into Inventor and utilize that and look for ways that we can make that experience better. Also things like shared views so that you can share designs outside of your organization for redlining and just conversations. And then finally, just the overall Inventor experience. Some of that is the UI, just the experience of using the product, installation, Inventor ideas. We get a boatload of Inventor ideas every year. Dan spends a lot of time out in the discussion forums looking at what hot topics are out there, what things people are looking for, and then seeing what we can do every release in that area. So you'll throughout today, you'll hear a number of things in each of these areas that we've really focused on and spent a bit of time on. It's pretty hard not to notice the new experience when you first launch Inventor 2020. I don't know how many of you have installed it yet, but you'll notice here on the screen, on the left side, this is 2019 and previous. On the right is Inventor 2020. One of the things that we have really been looking at for the last couple of years is kind of a cohesive experience across our products. So if you look on the left, that's AutoCAD and Inventor side by side, or kind of stacked on top of each other. And the UI looks a bit different, not completely different, but it doesn't necessarily look like it comes from the same company. And one of the things we're looking at is really trying to have our products look similar, have some consistency across them. So you'll notice that we've got a little bit lighter theme, we've got newer icons, and there's some consistency with a lot of those icons and the coloring and everything with tools like AutoCAD. And to go along with that, the light theme, we've adjusted lighting styles, kind of modernized those, brighten them up a little bit, an icon refresh, feature manipulators. And then we've been working on what we call Property Panel for a couple of years, and I'll get into that a little bit more. but it's a more intuitive, quicker way to get through a lot of your standard tools that you use day in and day out. And then another thing that we did, we added the ability to easily switch between, say, a high quality, a middle, and a performant quality graphic experience. So, I'm guessing as you're doing most of your day-to-day work, probably work in a performance mode, turns off a lot of the advanced graphic requirements, speeds things up for larger assemblies. But if you get into a presentation with a customer or your boss and you want to show a little nicer graphics or take some screenshots, you can just ramp that up to high quality and leverage that. So, a lot of these things are things you could have done in the past with just kind of hunting and pecking in a few areas. We've just made that really easy to switch between a performant and a high quality view. So a couple things we've done around the UI. And, when we talk about the cohesion and icon refresh, I've hit on that a little bit. But, one of the things that we spent quite a bit of time on is the property panel. We added the new property panel to measure in 2018, 2019, we added it to the whole dialog, and now we've added it to a couple of other commands this year. And, just some thinking behind that. As customers learn the product, we found that there was some inconsistencies across a number of our part modeling tools, just kind of the flow through the dialog box. And then, over the years, Inventor's been out for a long time. Over the years, we get questions about, kind of the layout of certain things in dialog boxes. So we wanted to step back, have a little more modern experience with the property panel. It can be docked virtually anywhere on screen. So you can dock it above your browser, below your browser, on the side of the browser, bottom left, doesn't really matter. But some of the things that this offers, when we first started looking at this, we wanted it to be more than just a graphical change, but something that would make you faster in using Inventor. So, some of the things we added was a breadcrumb. This is probably one of my favorite capabilities with it, really. When you're using, say, extrude, maybe you don't even have a sketch yet. You can launch the extrude command and then click on the breadcrumb to sketch, create a sketch, build that sketch all while you're in the extrude command, and then toggle over to the extrude, do your work in extrude. You may realize that you need to add an element to the sketch or edit some dimension in the sketch. Instead of having to cancel out of the extrude command, go into the sketch, make a change there, and then go back into extrude, you're able to just jump back and forth all while you're in the extrude command. So that breadcrumb is really what allows you to do that. And then from there, we've added presets. So anytime you see these property panels, we added this with Hull. Now you'll see it with extrude, revolve, and sweep and thread, that you can create presets and use, whether it's just you as an individual or your organization, you can set these up and use them anytime. So if you have maybe a 1/4 inch plate and a 1/2 inch plate that you use all the time, you can set it up as a preset. If you revolve between certain angles all the time and you don't want to have to keep entering those values, you can set that up as a preset. So just little things like that that speed up your day in and day out as you're going through these particular tools. We've improved the overall guides. We've had guides in here for some time, but we have had customers that, as they go through them, they didn't quite make sense or didn't give them enough information. So we've gone through a lot of the guides. We've added additional information, tried to make them a bit clearer what the tool is looking for. Edit in place. So kind of along the line with the breadcrumb, when I'm saying an extrude dialog box, I can edit dimensions from the extrude right from the graphic window. I can edit sketch dimensions. It just gives me fluidity while I'm in that extrude to make the tweaks from my graphical window instead of always having to go to my dialog box. So it makes that a bit easier. And then a highly requested one, better multi-monitor support. We know that a lot of you guys use multiple monitors, and really being able to support those in a much better way. So those are some of the UI graphical things that we've done. And I wanted to share, kind of pull the curtain back a little bit and talk a little bit about some of the development process. And, big changes like this, we don't take lightly. We've actually been working on this since 2015. So several years ago, we kicked off getting feedback, doing usability tests, and getting a lot of feedback from customers on, what they liked, what they didn't like, what challenges they had. And what goes into some of these things, we have tools like eye tracking where we'll have a set of steps that we ask customers to go through, and we'll track their eyes, kind of looking at what they're, seeing where they're looking when they're trying to do certain tasks, and get an idea if there's a clean flow through the command, if they're kind of looking all over the place for things. That helps us really figure out if they're confused or if something's not intuitive. So we spend a lot of time with usability, with eye tracking. We really focused on customers that have been using the product for many years. Most of it was about an 80%, 80% of our customers we talked to over the last 3-4 years have been using the software for over 5 years. And I've got a couple of charts to show that. But along this process too, oftentimes we'd do A/B testing where we'd give customers a couple of examples and get feedback of what they liked in, say, the A example and the B example, and then we'd iterate and take the things that we liked from both environments and pull that into a new experience and get feedback. And we iterated many times to make sure that we were kind of honing in the area that made most sense for customers. So hopefully that's helpful. It's kind of nice, I think, sometimes for you guys to hear some of the things that we do behind the scenes as we're going through some of these changes. So just a little bit of data behind this. I'm just going to build this out. Oftentimes we'd do surveys when we do these customer interactions, and this is pretty typical that most of our customers have been using the software over 5 years. We do want to make sure that we're talking to customers that are fairly new. It's a different perspective, getting up to speed. So it's important for us to find other avenues to be able to reach out and talk to them. But what kind, if they're using multiple monitors, what kind of workstation they're using, if they like the dialog box or the mini toolbar. We definitely heard a lot of customers weren't really keen on the mini toolbar. So going into looking at the new experience, how do we manage that? And then, things like ribbon. Do people like the ribbon? Do they like the ribbon from other products better? Just get a sense of what people use and what they like. And then, in some of the 2015 research we did early on, we showed some prototypes of the property panel and some of the things we could do, like the breadcrumbs. And that was the highest voted thing that people really liked and would like us to move forward on. Even higher than multi-monitor, which was a little bit surprising. But, those are things that we felt were important to do, each of those. So let's move on a little bit. Just a couple more things here with eye tracking. So, as we were doing some research with customers, this was kind of our older dialog boxes. So having somebody go through a task and use our old dialog boxes with, accomplishing a task, and then, looking at what that looks like in 2019, 2020 with our new property panel, you'll notice, this was a pretty typical view from our eye tracking in both cases. So, really trying to have it top down. You start at the top and kind of fill in information as you go down. A lot less mouse travel, not kind of looking all over the place. And that was one of our key goals, is to make it easier to use, faster to use, and more intuitive. So the commands that we focused on in this area: extrude, revolve, sweep, thread, and frame generator. We have other commands. We're not done yet by any means. Would like to go through and get to the majority of the part modeling and then get into the assembly commands. So over the next few years, you'll see us do more and more of these, but, really tackling a lot of the ones that are used most often. And, of course, we love getting feedback. So as you guys jump into 2020, play with it, certainly give feedback to us. We did that with Hull a lot to get it where we felt it was where it needed to be before we did some of these other commands. So moving over to multi-monitor support, and I've got a video to show some of these things, but multi-monitor support, this is something that we see most of our customers, 60+%, use multiple monitors. And, the experience wasn't great before. It was okay, but we wanted to make it look and feel like it really supported multiple monitors. So being able to grab a part or a subassembly, dock it over to another monitor, possibly dock multiple of those. When you're done, close one, go back to the overall assembly, and just kind of have it work as you would expect. So that's exactly what it does today. Customers that have played with it have really liked being able to have much better support there. And this is solid sweep. This is one that we've had as a customer request for many years. And we were hoping to release this last year. It just wasn't quite ready, so had a little more bake time, and here it is. But it solves some pretty difficult problems. Customers sometimes need to be able to take a solid object, sweep it along a path, and remove or add material based on that. And it's pretty hard to do that any other way. In this example, you can see a little dowel and being able to sweep that along a helical path to create some material or cut some material out for to basically pivot this pin 90 degrees in an assembly line. And again, pretty hard to do it any other way. Works really well, and really nice to have that in the product. Another one is unwrap. We know a lot of customers use sheet metal, and in some cases, some of the sheet metal objects that you need to flatten aren't really able to be flattened with our sheet metal flatten tool, and a lot of that has to do with the flattening algorithm, how the metal deforms and all that kind of stuff. So when you run into cases where you're not able to flatten things, we've introduced this new unwrap, and not just for sheet metal. If you're using fabrics, all sorts of objects that you want to be able to pick a face and just flatten it or unwrap it, you can do that. It's not taking into consider K factor. It's basically just unwrapping that and giving you some options on, keeping circles circular or slots or edges vertical, or, just straight edges. So you have some nice control there. And then from that, you can create a drawing. You can extrude it as a solid object. It's associative to the underlying 3D geometry. So it's a great little tool. We've had a number of customers that know that the geometry of this may not be exactly perfect, but it allows them to get there a lot faster than all the iterations that they do today to try to get the geometry that they need. So we're excited to get that out there and get people playing with it. Some other things, when you're extruding with taper turned on, sometimes you get faces that become disjointed, and we actually now have an option to merge those faces so that it gives you much more of a desired outcome. We've added loop selection, so when you're extruding something, and this is, I think, pretty huge for a lot of you, as you're extruding, you can actually pick, or using any of the features, you can now pick profiles in the sketch. In the past, you'd have to do a bit of trimming sometimes or create multiple sketches, or the trick that some of you know where you can put points at intersections to help it find the profile detection. Those days are gone. Now you can find those the loops much easier, and works I think a lot better and a lot easier than in the past. So love for you guys to play around with that. And then finally here, sketch blocks. Now you can see what features have consumed those sketch blocks. And hopefully this video comes over okay. Turn the audio off. But you'll see this example of the swept profile or the solid sweep, kind of that outcome. You'll see creation of that in a minute. But in here, you can see just grabbing individual loops. So instead of having to trim a lot of that stuff out, you can just go along a sketch, grab the pieces you want, very easy. Here you can see the relationship of sketch blocks, so being able to see what the child-parent relationship. Solid sweep, grabbing a solid object, picking, in this case, a helical path. And then from here, you can adjust the twist and angle of how this solid is going to be swept along, and then remove that material. So, I truthfully don't know how you'd go about doing this any other way. This would be pretty difficult. So customers that are doing that kind of stuff, this will help a lot. And then the unwrap, so being able to pick a face, unwrap it. You'll notice in this video, you can pick an edge to keep it linear. If you have holes or that slot, you want to make sure that slot is not twisting or turning. So you can pick those edges and make sure that it's not deforming it in any way. And make sure what's important stays the shape that you're looking for, and then be able to utilize that downstream. So those are just a few things in 2020 in the part modeling area. Let's jump over to frame generator. Another area that a lot of our industrial machinery customers use a lot. We've updated it with property panel. So now you'll see the new modern experience with the property panel. End caps, that's been a highly requested feature for a while, being able to have end caps in there. Custom notches, and then in-canvas manipulators with all the previews and everything. So much easier to see what's going on when you're making adjustments and trimming and extending and doing those types of things. And here's another short little video that will walk us through some of that. Maybe. There we go. So you can see some of the manipulators, some of the multi-notch support. Also being able to set up custom names. So if you want to be able to specify names for various type of elements, you can do that. And here's another look at the manipulators, being able to snap and move things around all in Canvas, being able to get a much better view of that. Multi-trim and notch in the dialog. You can see the new presets. So, really just kind of modernizing the experience here, making it faster and easier to do some of the common workflows that you use. With things like the coping here, if you're doing laser cuts, you can do a perpendicular cut there, so you get the shape that kind of the outcome that you're looking for. And then here, being able to specify what side you're trimming a member to. So again, just a lot of I wouldn't even say little fixes, but a lot of adjustments, just making it easier to get your frame members, be able to trim, get what you want, property name or file names, all those types of things. And then being able to support that in the end caps in things like Content Center. All right, some of the customer-driven improvements. So, again, a lot of our customers use sheet metal, no surprise there. And in doing things like mirroring sheet metal parts, oftentimes it's a little bit hard to control the two different sides if you're changing material thickness or various style property differences. Now you can link the styles. So if you mirror it over, what you do to one style can replicate over to the other style. So just keeping consistency across those two parts now. Joints, there are cases where you may have a slot and you're wanting to constrain to the center of a slot instead of having to put work geometry and things like that in your model. Now with joint, you can with joints you can select the center of the slot and constrain that and make that quite a bit easier than current workflows. Tube and pipe naming, you can change the naming defaults, some adjustments to design accelerators, the shaft generator, just some overall goodness there. And then if on the interoperability side, if you're using any CAD where you're bringing in things like SolidWorks files, CATIA, STEP, any of those, we have updated the versions. So, as CATIA, SolidWorks, Rhino, as they have new versions, we've now updated those so they can come into 2020 as well, just making sure that you have the ability to use those files in your designs when necessary. And then on interoperability as well, so Inventor and Fusion 360, if you're doing any generative design or working back and forth, we're making it much easier to be able to bring in that Fusion file directly inside of Inventor. You can just browse out to it and bring it in. It's not this export, import any longer, so makes it easier for you to leverage that capability. And on the performance side, we hear a lot of requests every release around performance. So there was a lot of work that was done for in-place editing, window selection, things like view orientation, component patterns. And on the component patterns, if at a part level you have a large pattern that you're making adjustments to, and you're doing that at an assembly level, you kind of get hit twice with making the change there. And then if you have an associative pattern for fasteners on there, it has to calculate that too. So now it's just doing, it's generating that pattern much, much faster, whether it's part or assembly, but you'll see that much quicker in your assemblies generating that. Express mode, being able to view your models much easier for those customers that don't have Inventor. And then some of the, some additional, I mentioned the feature patterns already, but drawing creation, view previews are much faster, hidden line display, auxiliary views. A lot of these things you'll find as you're in there are just much snappier, much faster and easier to use. So hopefully, as you guys are creating complex, large drawings, you'll notice a lot of these things. And then we've got a little video that will take us through this. And then maybe we'll open it up to some questions. I think right after this, we have the product design and manufacturing collection. So maybe we'll take some questions on Inventor. before that, and then we'll wrap up with some of the collection capabilities. But in here, you'll notice just kind of overall navigation. We've got a section view here, visually being able to section this much easier, inserting a part, adjusting a dimension. All of those things are just a bit faster and a bit easier for you to go in and do. All right, let's see. Yeah, so maybe we'll pause right here. We're about 30 minutes in, and we'll see if there are any questions or anything that we want to address before we jump into the collection stuff.
I think we addressed most of the questions that came in. We have like an army of people on the back end today. So definitely thank you, Dan and Chris, for helping get to some of those questions. I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to ask any questions they have before we move on to this next portion. So go ahead and type those into the Zoom questions panel.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear overall thoughts, what you like, what you may feel is missing in there. Just love to get overall thoughts around 2020, how you like it as a release. I'm guessing many of you haven't had a chance to use it yet, but just looking at this, if there's some nice things in here that you've been waiting for.
Yeah, it looks like Sean has a question here real quick. Can you give a quick example of the breadcrumb feature within Inventor 2020?
Yeah, so, some of the things that I really like in there, let's say that you go into extrude, you start extruding a sketch and you realize that, maybe you're missing a circle for a hole or a shaft. And, in the past, you'd pretty much either have to just accept what you've done in extrude or cancel out, go to the sketch, edit the sketch, put a circle in there, finish sketch, go back into extrude, go back into whatever you were doing, pick the profile. Now with the breadcrumb, you'd be able to start the extrude command, pick the profiles you'd want. You may realize, oh, darn it, I missed a circle in here. You'd be able to just, in the browser, click on the sketch breadcrumb. It would go into the sketch. You could click circle, create a circle. You're still really in the extrude dialog and extrude command, but it's letting you put additional sketch geometry, dimension it. And then in the breadcrumb, I'd click on extrude again, pick the profile file I want, and hit OK. So, it's really keeping you in context in the command you're using, but allowing you to, if you need to add elements, edit dimensions, things like that, you can do that.
The term breadcrumb was, I think, coined from Hansel and Gretel, wasn't it? I believe. Leaving a trail of knowing where you were, where you came from, and going back to it and going back and forth. So I think just for a little tidbit there.
Yeah, and that's something that would like to add in more areas. So you have it in whole, you now have it in extrude, revolve, sweep. You'll see that come in more commands over time. But where it makes sense, where you use something like a sketch or something else, you'll be able to kind of chain some of those commands together.
There was one question I'll take. There was, have any changes or bug fixes been made to iMates? Not for the 2020 release, but we are looking at investigating some scenarios that, the named iMates aren't necessarily working as expected, long-standing issues in iMates. So again, they do work as they always have with the Alt key and, placing from content with the iMates or placing with iMates enabled. But we are investigating a couple workflows, specifically the named iMates that we'll be looking at in a future time.
So there's also a question about interoperability. We talked about that a little bit, and they're asking about Inventor and Revit. So that is also something we're looking at now. And if you want to see and have feedback on that, we would suggest that you go look at our feedback community that Chris runs. It's a great way of looking at some of our future considerations.
So also Jerry asked, how is Unwrap beneficial when it doesn't take into account expansion, contraction of material, similar to stamping a sheet metal part? So that's exactly the use case. When you have an extreme deformation and you have using a standard modeling practice that does not leverage the standard sheet metal bends or folds, there was just no workaround to actually obtain a flat pattern from that. It was very difficult to extract that. So the notion and our intention for the Unwrap command is to allow you to select any face on a part file, whether it be sheet metal or a 3D part that you just modeled with standard practices, or even a step file that you imported from some other CAD package, to select that face and get that that stamp, that if it was stamped or deformed, to get a rough estimate of the footprint of what it would take to what the blank size would be before 1 ton press hits it, or whatever might deform that feature. So again, it is just taking topology. We don't, again, the bend allowances, the sheet metal styles, it's still all in place for standard sheet metal parts. We should still use that for regular typical use cases for sheet metal. But again, it's just another tool that allows you to work around a scenario where you might not be able to extract a legitimate flat pattern.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, we also had one here, any Inventor Studio enhancements. At the moment, I don't believe there's any enhancements in 2020. If there are small enhancements, but no big changes there. And I would definitely highly recommend, if there are things you were hoping in 2020 you're not seeing in here, definitely reach out to us, go out to the discussion forums, get your ideas out there. The team spends a lot of time on the idea station looking what gets voted up, what's highly, we get boatloads of requests, and that's one way that it helps us kind of determine at a high level the level of interest for some of these things in the product. So make sure and have your voice heard out there.
Cool. Let's just move on. I know there's a couple more questions in here. Hopefully our army in the back can go ahead and take care of some of these while we're moving. I think we're good to go, Garen.
Sounds good. So one of the big things you'll see for the collections this year, in the past, this was kind of the naming. You had Inventor Professional, Autodesk Nastran, NCAD, HSM, Nesting Utility, and the Factory Design Utility. We also had Tolerance Analysis that got added that's not showing up here. One of the things that we found, Inventor has a very strong brand name. A lot of people know of Inventor, but we're a bit confused when they go to their manage page on things like Nastran, HSM, not really knowing what they were, or if they were standalone desktop applications or part of an Inventor add-in. So one of the things we did this year, let's see if I can advance this, we renamed all of the collection tools that were that worked inside of Inventor. So HSM is now Inventor CAM. The nesting utility is Inventor Nest. Nastran NCAD is now Inventor Nastran. And Inventor Tolerance Analysis, we named it Inventor Tolerance Analysis that last year because we knew where we were going with this. But as I mentioned before, one of the big reasons, a lot of it was to make it clear that these are add-ins for Inventor, utilizing the Inventor brand name. So you'll notice, if there are things we add in the future, we'll follow this nomenclature. If you're going out to the manage page looking for something like HSM, it's now Inventor CAM, and that's the rationale behind that. We are working on things like the discussion forums and some of those things just to get that all cleaned up and same naming and all of that over the next couple months. And then I'd say a big change, if any of you are using the Factory Utility, that actually came into the larger Autodesk organization. So, it's kind of managed under the same group, which is really great because, I think now just across the Inventor product, having it all under the same team is really helpful. So you may not notice anything right now out of the gate with Factory, but I'd say behind the scenes, there's some nice things going on there, just kind of bringing teams together, working together. Some of the big things you will see with Factory, in the past, oftentimes if you had different elements, you'd need to open up something in AutoCAD before you'd open it up in somewhere else to do the updates. And now that's no longer. Now, you can just open up the actual file and, it'll update and do whatever it needs to do for you to be able to utilize that without having to bounce around between various applications. So, trying to streamline process, organization, all that kind of stuff. And then a couple things that I'll highlight. So the tolerance analysis tool, I don't know how many of you guys have used it, but we've added some for 2020. You can now use it supports insert constraint. Sub-assemblies, those were a couple things that we didn't support at launch. The tolerance and Nastran, there's some work that's been done to make it easier for our standalone Nastran customers to be able to use the Nastran inside of Inventor. So Inventor Nastran. So you'll notice some nice tools in there just to kind of streamline that. And then some of our old simulation tools, there's also been a bit of work on Inventor Nastran to make the transition over to the Nastran tools. So really just making that easier to use, easier to transition some of your older workflows onto the Nastran engine. Nesting has had a boatload of updates from all the point releases, so it's changed a lot over the year. It started out as just sheet metal only. Now you can do it as non-sheet metal parts as well. And, there's a whole slew of enhancements over the year around that. And then CAM, there's not a lot of adjustments in CAM. There's some great things coming on tool libraries and things like that down the road, but not any big changes on the CAM side at the moment. So, really rebranding and I'm working through some of that. But so hopefully that helps on the collection side. That doesn't cover, I know AutoCAD, you guys have another webinar around AutoCAD and Vault and some of those tools, so I'm not going to get into that. But at a high level, that's kind of where we're at. Know when you go into your manage page, names have changed a little bit, and just get familiar with that. There's an FAQ document. There's an Inventor blog that covers some of these, so you can go out and look at those articles as well. But at a high level, that's pretty much what I had for everybody. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, certainly spend some time out on the feedback portal, the idea page. We spend a lot of time. Dan spends a lot of time. Chris spends a lot of time out there. So does Kyle, Johnson Shui, if any of you guys know Johnson. There's just a lot of time that we spend looking at what people are saying, what challenges you guys have, and helping roll that into future versions of the product. So again, we'll open it up from there and wrap up.
Cool. And a ton of stuff came through. Thanks, guys, on the back end for helping me answer a couple of those questions. Let's go ahead and take care of a couple of the ones that I think a lot of people will benefit in hearing the answer to. In regards to release dates for some of the other products, things like Factory, things like Inventor Nastran, things like Inventor CAM, things like product design product design suites. Do you have any information on that kind of stuff, Karen?
Yeah, so CAM, Nastran, those will be dropping, I think next week, CAM, I think it's the 15th or 16th, you'll see CAM. Over the next week or two, you should see pretty much the majority of the entitlement show up in the collection, in your manage page. So those are right around the corner. Suites, I'm not sure what the question is on suites. That's one we may have to take offline depending on what it is.
I think Suites released this week. I'm sure I saw a notification.
Yeah. So a lot of these, when we do launch, it is a little bit of a rolling. Some of it is there's a slight delay when we release some of the add-ins, and then sometimes it takes a little time to replicate and get through the servers. So some people will start seeing it a day or two before others. But yeah, all those things should be coming online really soon.
Yep. And if anyone has any questions about that, go ahead and give us a ring. You can call us or email us at lifeline@cativ.com. More than happy to answer your questions. If you can't see something for some reason, you think you should be seeing something and you can't, more than happy to help you clarify that by taking a look with you. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these other questions. Dan, Chris, have you seen anything in the back that?
Yeah, I'll take Sean asked, are there plans to make similar UI updates or changes within the drawing environment in Autodesk Inventor 2021? So it's perfectly timing for the slide that you see here, Inventor Feedback Community. We're talking about Inventor 2020 right now with this deck. But if you want to see what's going on and get a sneak preview of what we're cooking for 2021, please join the Inventor Feedback Community. There'll be lots of discussions. There are some things that will be in the short term if they're not there yet. Additionally, there was a question that was asked about, let me see where this one was at. It was Corey asked about Vault naming scheme enhancements. So as mentioned, there'll be a Vault session that's hosted later, but we did deliver in 2019 one, I believe it was, .2, the frame generator, we delivered a UI change in the file naming defaults where you could specify the file name defaults. In Inventor 2020, we extended this to tube and pipe environments. So if you're using the cable and the tube and pipe and the frame generator tools, you can set the defaults for what your frame members will be named. You can set some characteristics like indexing the numbers, starting at a particular number. So the vault naming pieces of that will all still be supported, but we do have a vision for touching other areas of file name defaults that you might want to specify and have create on the fly as you go. But again, I won't answer the vault naming piece specifically, but again, that we are, any file naming thing that we do on Inventor side can ultimately be modified by the vault naming conventions on the vault. I'm sorry, the Inventor side can be touched by the vault conventions on their side as well.
Yep, I'm sure Irvin will talk about that a little bit next week. That is going to be next week for those of you who, maybe didn't hear that earlier. But yeah, the next 2 weeks are going to be the same thing that we did today, except it's going to be all about Vault. The one after that is going to be all about AutoCAD. So if those are two things that you use, and generally I would say 90+% of our Inventor users are using Vault, stay tuned for that one as well. So let's take a look at some of these other questions.
Yeah, there's one in here for AutoCAD and Plant 3D. It would be good for us to better understand that. That may be one that we can take offline a little bit, but I will say there's quite a bit of work that we're looking at and doing some research about better interoperability between, Inventor and BIM 360, Revit, some of those tools. We have a pretty good integration with InfraWorks today. But we're definitely looking at those workflows, trying to better understand what gaps we may have. So with things like that, Kevin, it might be good if we can connect with you and get a better understanding what you're doing and what challenges you face.
Yep, and Kevin, I'll make a note here to myself to go ahead and follow up with you on that. We have worked with a lot of customers in terms of completing said workflow from like Inventor to Plant, but it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But we can certainly help you figure out what that is and how we can help you get there. So let's see here. Is the members limit in an iPart greater than before? I don't think anything changed on that side. Can you guys confirm?
No, nothing changed on that in 2020. In terms of general parts configuration workflows like iParts, though, that's another project that we're working on for the future. So again, if you're interested in configurations, that's a good topic to sign up for the Inventor feedback community.
Certainly. Yep. And I've seen this like 3 or 4 times. I'm sure you guys have heard it a couple of times. I've had a couple of support calls already in 2020 as people really want that dark theme back. So I'm just letting you guys know. I'm sure it's going to pop up on ideas. I see you all smiling. I'm sure you guys have heard it numerous times.
Yeah, we haven't heard it.
That's funny.
Another question about any improvements with the order and reordering of features in the assembly tree. Take a look on the feedback community.
Yeah, and while we're looking at this, for our longtime Inventor users, it used to be we released Inventor once a year, March timeframe. It was kind of a big thud. Would do some service packs, and that was kind of it. Now there's a bit of work we do we have point releases, and it's amazing how engaged the various teams are within the Inventor team with customers. So a lot of these things, we say go out to the idea station, the forums, and make comments. It really is, that's what feeds the majority of our projects. That's where we don't come up with ideas. It really is spending time out there. So these things that are near and dear to your heart, things that are really important to you, make sure you're getting them out there. Make sure you're communicating out there with us. That really is what drives the product for us.
Yep. Yeah, and let us know at Cativa as well if you have something that you want to bring up, because more often than not, I'll have a support case. We'll point someone to create something in Inventor Ideas, and then I may or may not just ping my whole team and say, hey, can you upvote this? So if you want your things upvoted, talk to me and I might be able to make that happen.
We didn't hear that.
Chris and Dan are just like,
There was also a question from Patrick, I believe, on FrameGen. Will we be able to see actual part preview instead of wire preview? I'm currently using Inventor 2018. You'll be very pleased with Inventor 2020. There's a great deal of enhancements to FrameGen, as Garen alluded to, but one of them is that was introduced in 2019. I think it was .1, was that we took that green preview and made it more of a shaded preview. Additionally, there's some in 2020. There's some great controls for orientation, for the being center or left justified, as well as offsetting. Some great notch enhancements and some cool trim to frame to select the side that you want to trim. So overall, a large number of FrameGen enhancements in addition to the file naming one that I mentioned just a little bit earlier.
So it looks like there's also a question here about iDraw is what they're saying. Gallo's saying iDraw. Sounds a lot like some sort of drawing automation that they're wanting to take a look at. And I would say, it's something that would be great for you to kind of join the feedback or put on ideas and see what we're working on there.
That functionality was done as part of the, I think it was part of the mold product, because when you do a mold design, you end up with a lot of mold parts that are essentially identical. So there is some automation that's done for mold designers, which, thinking about it, would be a good enhancement to pass out to the broader product. But nothing changed for 2020 across the board for that.
Yeah, there's nothing for 2020, but I think we're looking at drawing automations and seeing what people want for drawing automations and kind of talking a little bit about that. But that's way in the future. But we would love to feedback on what you guys think would be useful in that.
Yeah, there's actually an active topic as of today on the feedback forums discussing future needs for drawing automations. That would be a good one to add there.
Yep. And Kyle, we can take that offline between you guys and myself too. I work with a lot of customers who have started looking at doing drawing automation with things like iLogic and the API. So definitely we can have a conversation about that offline, because I think that they have passed on all the things that they've ever wanted to our team, and we can pass that kind of stuff to you guys to see what you guys can do out of the box.
A question in the chat, Garen, about what's new for tolerance analysis.
Yeah, so tolerance analysis, we got, since launch, added insert constraint support and nested subassembly support. Those were the two key things for 2020.
One question about flexibility enhancement and weldment. IEM, for instance, welded hinges. So in the weldment environment for 2020, we extended the thread feature to support creation, either external threads or internal threads on weldments, as well as in the assembly environment. This was a limitation that threads had before. I don't think anything in the respect that you're talking about welded hinges. I'm not really sure. That might be maybe pause reps in a weldment, but no, nothing, I don't think, in that area that you're asking. But the major one was the support for threads.
All right, and it looks like we've got two more here. Let's see here. There's a question about CFD applications within Inventor. So Autodesk does have a CFD tool, which is Autodesk CFD, and there is some interoperability between that and Inventor. It's not in Canvas, but there is a workflow from Inventor to CFD. So if that's something you're looking at, Hugo, let us know, and we can help you answer any questions you have about that workflow. It is pretty straightforward to do that. It's just not in Canvas. And then let me make sure there's nothing else from the other chats that I have. And then that question is, for factory projects, can we perform an integrated analysis with Autodesk Process Analysis? Let's see.
Not sure we know that one. I think we'd have to dig in a little bit more to that one.
Yeah, I think we'd have to take that one offline, Hugo. Let us know what you're trying to accomplish, like I said, and we can go ahead and address that offline. Cool. I think that's everything for questions. I'm going to give everyone another 30 seconds or so to ask any last minute questions that they do have. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone who's been a part of this webinar, as well as the ones that are coming up. So Garen, Chris, Dan, and Kyle, thank you for joining us this morning. I know it's a little bit cold over there. You can see Chris wearing his sweater, but yeah, it's nice and, it's about 80 degrees here in Southern California.
Not nice.
That's just cruel.
Yeah, I know. It was 90 plus on Monday. So
I'm up in Michigan. We had snow. We had a couple inches of snow last night. So yeah, it's a drag.
Yeah, a little bit different over here. And then I'd like to thank everyone on the back end too, Jessica for helping us set this up, Stacy for helping set all of this stuff up as well. Thanks guys for putting on this. And then as well as, everyone who attends every week. If we didn't have a user base attending these every week, we wouldn't be putting them on for 3 years. I think we're touching almost 200 webinars. So it's getting up there. So definitely thank you all for being part of our community every day and using the tools that we support. So that's that. So for that, I don't have any questions that are showing up, but everyone make sure to show up next week and the week after for what's new in Vault 2020 with Irvin Hayes, who's been doing these webinars with us for the last 3 years. And then what we have right after that on the 25th, I believe, what's new in AutoCAD 2020 as well. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks again, everybody from Autodesk. And we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks.